Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
Where we continue to follow the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden now.
Those are just some of the scenes overnight as thousands of Americans gathered in celebration of Osama bin Laden's death.
Former Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill says he has thought about the mission every day since that May Day in 2011.
For multiple conversations you had with Rob O'Neill over the past year and a half, how'd you get
access? And you described that his head kind of exploded when you hit him.
I actually hit him 3 times because I shot him twice when he was standing and once on the ground.
That is the fucking American badass right there.
Go, go, go. We are not going for fame and we are not going for bravado. We are going for the single mom who dropped her kids off at elementary school on a Tuesday morning, and then 45 minutes later she jumped to her death out of a skyscraper.
If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator.
I'm Rob O'Neill, and this is the Operator Podcast. All right, welcome back to the Operator Podcast. I'm your host, Robert J. O'Neill, and once again, the reason we call it the Operator Podcast is because I'm talking to you as an operator. If you're doing something that is making the world a better place, your family a better place, or just your community, whatnot, you're an operator too. So I want to hear from you on Instagram at the Operator Podcast or at Mchooyah, MCHOOYAH, and I will definitely answer that. Sometimes my team is answering the Operator Podcast. I will answer Mchooyah. So, be nice. Also on Twitter, Mchooyah. But what I want to, I'll talk about stuff. If I'm wrong about something, tell me I'm wrong. If I'm right, you can agree. If you want to hear about something, let me know, and we can converse there. I'm going to start off today's podcast with something kind of a little bit controversial. See, I'm up in the Northeast. I'm up in Cape Cod, and the closer north you get, you can find some coffee called Tim Hortons because he was a hockey player. And I found some. It's at a store nearby. And we had a Tim Hortons in Kandahar on the base. You can get donuts and coffee in war because I'll be damned if you're going to fight a war in a country that smells like shit without the sweet taste of coffee and donuts. But my issue is, remember when there still might be in some stores, the express line, like 12 items or less? I've seen those around a little bit, but they're kind of going away in favor of the self-checkout line. And I don't think there's a limit on most checkout lines, but we need to look into this because I'm a little bit late today to the podcast because I'm behind people and they have these shopping carts full. And I think there should be a limit to the self-checkout for a number of reasons. One, most people are stupid. That's the only reason. I'm stupid as well. I'm messing with you. No, but if you have certain stuff, like a lot of items, and then especially a lot of fresh fruit that you got to put, fresh vegetables, in the plastic bag, and you have to type the code, weigh them, and all this stuff, leave it to the pros that are working there and let them do it instead of the people behind you, because I'm standing behind people, and, again, myself included. I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody there, and I'll find myself in a series of, just looking around, not paying attention to anything. But they're up there and they can't do it, and it kind of slows the rest of us down. Just get in there, get your stuff, and move on. But anyway, maybe controversial, but just watching people try to check out of a grocery store, they make it look hard. But again, a lot of people make putting a carry-on bag in the right place hard. We make driving look hard. We make crossing a crosswalk look hard. And it's just amazing because what we all do whenever we get done doing whatever it is, screwing up our carry-ons on the plane or not being able to check out in an expeditious manner at the grocery store, we all go back and we all start yelling on social media about politics. And I don't think any of us are experts at anything, but my first thought when I see people screwing stuff like that up is, their vote counts just the same as your vote counts, and we're all kind of in this together, which it's one of those things where, life is short, so make sure you spend most of your time arguing with complete strangers on the internet instead of other stuff. I actually got a chance to spend some time with my family this weekend. I had some family members come in, and we drove up to Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is awesome. My first time in P-Town. I've never been there before, and I went up there sort of knowing what to expect. I've heard great things. The food's incredible. The scenery's awesome. I love looking at the ships. It's in a cove. I know right around the corner, some of my buddies of Great Whites are chilling out right there, which always makes for a good ecosystem. Wonderful place, wonderful food, cool environment, great live music and stuff. Not exactly a Donald Trump stronghold. Not, I saw some pretty funny shirts up there. I'm not going to lie. For obvious reasons, a large gay community and the gay community doesn't lean towards people like Donald Trump. I'm not going to really get into that. Everyone's vote counts the same. But it was fun. I saw some clever shirts. I think if you listen to this podcast, you know where I stand politically. But also, I think that most people are good. And I never lose your sense of humor. Don't be afraid to have a good time, because none of us are getting out of this alive anyway. But I saw a shirt and it said Trump 20 to 24 years in prison. Come on. I mean, that's just funny. I don't care who you are. But we had a good time in P-Town. I took a picture. I saw, I'm not sure how to describe what it's like walking down Main Street in P-Town. Lots of assless chaps. No shortage of fishnet half shirts, drag queens. I actually saw some drag queens like, I kind of want to go see these people perform. This is awesome. I had a drag queen say that they would perform live share for me. And if you don't like live share, you can just turn this podcast off right now. But we did do that. A lot of speedos, a lot of people hanging out. Again, just a cool vibe. Great food, great lobster. But I got a picture, and I just by chance, I wore my Bee Gees shirt because I am a fan of the Bee Gees. And it looked good. There was some mushrooms and shit, and we've talked about psychedelics before. Bee Gees probably wrote some great songs because of that. And people will say the Bee Gees, fuck them. They sold out for the disco era, and they made too many disco, Saturday Night Fever. But that album, it made them hundreds of millions of dollars. It got them Bentleys and Ferraris, so whatever. Anyway, I was wearing the Bee Gees t-shirt, and I had a blast with that. But I saw this dude in drag, and he was wearing a Greta Thunberg mask, and I was like, that's just awesome. Greta Thunberg with like a slim cigar, and I asked Miss Thunberg if I could get a picture with me and the drag queen together, and obviously we did it. I got the picture. I posted it, how much fun I was having in P-Town, and people were saying I got fat. They're looking at my gut and saying I got fat. First of all, I'm 48 years old, but there's so much good food around here. Lobster rolls, there's mayonnaise in those, and I like a little extra mayonnaise, so get off my back. But P-Town was awesome. It's great up here. I'm not sure what the hell I was saying, but if you go to the self-checkout line, A, know how many items you have. 2, be fast, and D, don't fuck it up. This episode of the Operator Podcast, I need to talk about our sponsor, Mando. I've talked about Mando before, and you got to get into me. You'll absolutely love them. Mando has, you can simplify your travel with Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar. It's a 5-ounce bar that does the work of shampoo, face wash, body wash, and get this, deodorant. So that's all you need. You can use it for a rich lather. Technically, it's a 5-in-1. It's clinically proven to last 24 hours. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar is formulated with a gentle alpha hydroxy acid that stops odor at its source. And regular soap can't just do that because the pH level is too high. Now, I'm not going to bullshit you. I don't know what alpha proxy is or what pH means. I know the shit works, and a doctor designed it, and it smells fantastic. Plus, I travel a lot. I can actually live out of a carry-on for about 19 days without doing laundry, which means I have a lot of extra room in my bag. For what if I want something extra, I travel, maybe a tuxedo, maybe a Viking helmet, whatever I need. There's room because of this. It just simplifies your hygiene routine, and the only thing you really need to pack. You can get it in 3 cologne quality scents. You've heard me talk about these before. Mount Fuji is fresh and woodsy bourbon leather, sweet and sophisticated, just like you. And Pro Sport is clean and citrusy. My go-to is Mount Fuji. I dig it. The smell of the Mount Fuji is so good. When I wore it the first time, my wife immediately told me, you will wear nothing else, and she just loves this new stuff. It's the scent of confidence, and it comes with benefits. I'm not going to embellish on what the benefits are, but it's good. Some of them are, I have so much room in my carry-on. She has room for some of her shoes. But they also have whole-body deodorant. It's safe to use anywhere. I mean, anywhere. Pits, packages, grundle, belly buttons, butt cracks, all that stuff. Created by a doctor like I've mentioned. And so, BO can be misdiagnosed and mistreated. Mando is American-made, and it diagnoses it correctly, makes it smell good. The whole-body deodorant is tough enough to use anywhere, but it's sensitive. Tough enough to combat the odors, but sensitive to use anywhere. It's aluminum-free, baking soda-free, it's cruelty-free, which is great, dye-free, it's vegan, clinically proven to control body odor better than a shower with soap alone. So that's good stuff. I need you to go to shopmando.com. Check it out. Use code THEOPERATOR. That's the discount code I have for you. $5 off the starter pack. The starter pack, this is an exclusive code. It's 40% off your starter pack. And it's shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Use code THEOPERATOR to get $5 off your starter pack. Check it out. It'll help you travel light and not stink at night. So what we're going to do on this episode of The Operator is I want to get into, lately, there has been a lot of talk about Tim Walz, who is Kamala Harris's running mate, governor of Minnesota, and what he's bringing to the table right now. Because I don't know if you know this about politics, when you start getting in at the higher levels, the other side of the aisle, because even though there is basically a uniparty in Washington, D.C., the Democrats and Republicans attack each other. Democrats are really good at it, and they're ruthless, to the point where if you disagree with them, they will try to ruin your life and ruin your families and things like that. And it's the point I'm making, though, is that they go into your past. Now, Tim Walz was a member of the National Guard for 25 years. Sorry about that. It's one of those two. I have it written down somewhere, but as you saw, I put my notes down. Long time. He did hold the billet of Command Sergeant Major, which means he was the Command Sergeant Major. He had the billet. He didn't finish the courses necessary to actually become a Command Sergeant Major. And as he was in that position, his group went over to Iraq, and he didn't go with them because he was running for Congress. Now, there's a lot of hullabaloo about what's happening there. Technically, he served his country. I think he retired before his contract was up, and he definitely didn't go to Iraq, and it is what it is. That's just what happened. The problem, and I don't have a problem with his service. I think that's great. The problem is him lying about his service. And a lot of guys embellish what they did. A lot of guys do that now. A lot of guys. It's a different story, and it was in my case when the bullets start coming at you, when it's a 360, even more ups and downs, roadside bombs are starting. I know a lot of dudes that didn't want to go. I know a lot of dudes who didn't go. You can take different billets. You can still serve honorably. A lot of guys didn't go to combat. A lot of guys went to combat and decided they didn't want to go to combat anymore. Like you always hear, hey, man, let's get some. It's always time to get some until you get some. And then maybe you don't want to do it anymore. And there are guys here and there that just kind of slip it in later. Now's a convenient time because the wars are over. I'm sorry. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, the war in Afghanistan. Okay, as far as we know, those wars are over. But so it's easier now to be a hero. It's like I always say with the dude you see rolling around with a shirt that says, I like to kick in doors and shoot fuckers in the face. No, you don't, because you've never done it. And it's not that pleasant. People embellish, and people do lie. And now Tim's getting called out for a lot of stuff that he did, and I'm going to get into that. Here's where I don't like to bash other veterans. I really don't like to do it. I will call out people lying about their service in order to get ahead, to make more money, or to get political office. I think there's a problem with that. But I don't like talking shit about it. I think if you have an issue with another veteran, you should be able to talk to them, text them, meet them in person or whatever, and have a talk about it if you think they're wrong, and hopefully they can explain their point. There's no We've seen a lot of this on social media recently. Veterans have been getting on, a lot of special operators, a lot of Navy SEALs. They get on the internet. They start bashing other Navy SEALs. I guess we're really good at that. It seems like we are. I don't like it. And, I mean, it's not just Navy SEALs, though. I've seen Green Berets do it. I've seen other dudes do it. I've seen, Rangers do it. And they say that I'm bashing this dude because it's what he's saying is bad for recruitment. All right. Well, so is bash. Like, a lot of young kids watch us, watch me. They watch guys that do other podcasts. And bashing another veteran isn't going to help them enlist. I think you should put a better face on it than that. There's no reason to go out there and accuse someone of murder. There's certainly no excuses for saying something did or didn't happen if you weren't fucking there. It's ridiculous. Well, someone told me that. Bullshit. If you weren't there at the time that something happened, you only know what you were told. And then you only know what you were told because there was a reason you were told a certain way. You know, I've heard shit too. The Bin Laden raid, for the love of God, I can't get away from that thing. I've heard everything from it didn't happen. Bin Laden died of dialysis. We killed a body double. I didn't kill shit like that. I hear it. I've heard it before. And I mean, I'm at the point now too. I'm gonna tell you what happened, and I told you what happened for history's sake, and I saw it. Bin Laden saw it for a second, and that's about it. Amal Bin Laden saw it. She got shot too. I didn't shoot her. Someone shot her. A lot of shit goes down that way. But I've been on other missions too. I've said I was the lead jumper on the Captain Phillips raid, which I was. I was the lead jumper to rescue Captain Phillips. I wasn't one of the shooters. You know why? Because I was drinking coffee in the coffee mess when the snipers took a shot. I'm proud of what I did. Be proud of what you've done. There's no reason to lie about it. There's no reason to I was on the mountain when we rescued Marcus Luttrell. I didn't pull him out of the village. I didn't grab him. I was up on the mountain looking over the Shuriak Valley. We're heading down. We've been awake for a few days. We've been climbing. We called in CAS A-10s on different assholes. I've never said I rescued Marcus Luttrell. I've never said I was the sniper that killed the Somali pirates, because that ain't true. I did kill Osama bin Laden. So what? That's it. But then other guys, for some weird reason, like to get, I don't know if it's the stinky scent of jealousy that comes out. There's no reason for that. What are you going to get out of simply bashing a veteran just for the sake of bashing it? And again, if you want to hear more about, again, I'm not even dropping names right now because I don't feel like it. I don't think it's my place, because a lot of stuff some vets are accusing other vets of. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. So I'm not gonna be an expert on some shit that I didn't saw. I can read stuff, and I can try to get as informed as I can, which you should too. Get informed on what you think you know or what you do know, and then give an opinion. But to whomever you're telling that opinion, there's no reason to say, now take my word for it. That's bullshit. But there's a video, and we could talk about this later too, because I'm so beyond giving a shit. Even when people say the stuff about Bin Laden, they're like, "Hi, I'm Rob O'Neill, and I haven't talked about Bin Laden for 3 minutes." Okay, well then stop fucking asking. You'll never hear about it again if you stop asking. But I did a podcast a number of months ago because it sounded fun. With these two fucking jackwagons that I'm not going to mention their names either because they don't deserve any credit for anything. But they said something about their conspiracy guys, and one was like he said he was law enforcement. Whatever. All I can guarantee by looking at this guy that I wasn't there is that he definitely married a fat, ugly girl. That's all I'm saying. But they want to talk about like conspiracies and shit, and they wanted the Bin Laden thing because they don't believe me. That's fine. And then they want to talk about like the moon landing and Red Wings, and they want to talk about Operation Anaconda, Robert's Raid, shit like that. And I thought I could get on there and I'm not even going on there to prove it. I'm certainly not going on there to debate. I can tell you what I know. I can tell you that I knew Neil Roberts. I can tell you where I was when I found out he was killed, because that's one of the times where I heard the difficult question, did you know Neil Roberts? It's like, what the fuck do you mean, did I know? And then you hear the story. But I thought it'd be fun. And then we were talking, and these two losers decided it was a debate behind my back. And one of the guys, this dude that claims he was a law enforcement guy, he said, yeah, we mentioned, what he did is he started mentioning names of dudes that were on the Bin Laden raid that they don't want their names out. And I'm not going to say, oh shit, yeah, I know that. It's like, if you don't want your name out there, I'm not going to say it, because you're one of the guys that's not going to tell the story, that doesn't want to be known that they were there. Because, hey, newsflash, motherfucker, there were more guys than me on the Bin Laden raid. Holy shit. 4 other dudes flew the helicopters, and they were crew chiefs too. Nuts. I didn't find Bin Laden either. CIA did. We'll get into that later. But he started naming names, and I'm kind of like, hey, oh, dude. And then they edited that. They're like, here's where we confront Rob O'Neill, and you could tell he's lying. It's like, all right, well, hope you enjoy your 10 minutes. So anyway, I want to get into just, I guess the point of that is just be proud of what you've done. And if someone else has done something else, and if you do or do not believe them, then just find out. You know, you didn't prove anything just by trying to get more likes and follows. But yeah, I'm gonna touch on the Tim Walz stuff, and then I want to talk about the newest phrase that they're calling the newest phrase I'm going to get into, because what they do, I don't know if you know this, but the media is in cahoots with the Democrats. There's no doubt about it. What the Democrats are is they're this group of yes men and women who live in Washington, D.C., and it's actually a small place. They go to Cafe Milano, delicious, by the way. They make never mind, I'm not going to tell you what they make. They make good stuff. They talk to each other. They badmouth each other on the air. They go to Cafe Milano. They go to Bull Feathers, and they all have cocktails. They know each other. They hang around with lobbyists, and then the press, they say exactly what they need to say to keep them in power. And so the press stays in power, and they get famous. We're all famous, and then whatever. But what you'll notice is they sent out words of the day, phrases that phases or whatever the shit they call it. And it happened recently with the term weird. Yeah, he's weird. He's just weird. And you hear weird, weird, weird. It's all weird, weird, weird. Because someone got the memo. Well, the new memo, and you may not have heard this, is happy warrior. They're calling Tim Walz a happy warrior. And that I'm going to break that down in a second, because basically it's someone who's a warrior who's also happy. If that makes any sense at all. I'm going to tell you this right now, because I did break into Ibogaine, the treatment that I went through a little while ago, and the veterans, what they go through who have actually been to combat, not like Tim Walz because he hasn't. There's nothing happy about being a warrior. Essentially, you're going into someone's house that you don't know, that you've never met in a country you invaded, and you kill them. And then you live with that. Or your friend next to you gets blown in half. Or you lost all of your hearing because you got in a gunfight so fucking long, your buddy up on the 50 cal is shooting to save you. And you're trying to go in between Carl Gustavs and blast those off. Huge explosions, IED, suicide bombers. Not happy. The suicide rate for veterans is insane. They're not happy. So I'm not happy with the happy warrior shit. So the new thing is they're calling Tim Walz the happy warrior, and there's a long, long history about that. So let's break it down. I'm not trying to bash Tim Walz's service, but I am talking about, and I'm not even calling it stolen valor. I'm just calling it shit that you know, one day you're running for an office and you don't think you're going to get to a spot where people are going to pay attention. All of a sudden you are, and stuff haunts you. And probably one of the reasons I'm not going to run for any office at all, because God knows what kind of videos are out there. But there's just a history of Tim Walz saying stuff that not only was he didn't just embellish, it was just a lie. He said in a speech one time, we shouldn't allow weapons that I carried in war to be on America's streets, because obviously he's a Democrat, he's pushing for gun control, but he never carried weapons in war. He never went to war. So that's not an issue, and they're saying he misspoke. Let's see, there's another quote that says, in the years after that classroom, I had the privilege of serving in the state's National Guard. I stood one night in the dark of night on the tarmac at Bagram Air Base and watched a military ramp ceremony, a soldier's body being loaded onto the plane to be returned home. And he said, now, he lied about serving in Iraq, and right here he said Bagram Airfield, being very ambiguous, but everyone knows Bagram Airfield's not in Iraq, it's in Afghanistan. He also mentioned he was supporting OEF in Iraq, which is actually OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom. But he said this before, and what he's not saying is he was actually a member of Congress when he was at the ramp ceremony, which, again, I'm just tell the truth that you were there. But again, they're saying that he misspoke. And like the Democrats right now are saying, well, he handled weapons of war and he trained people on weapons of war. Well, anyone can handle a weapon of war. Go to Las Vegas, they'll let you shoot anything. And, you know, the whole thing with the OEF, OIF thing and not going over there because he couldn't run for office, or he couldn't go to war because he ran for office. Tulsi Gabbard did that. She managed to do both. When he was a member of Congress, he had a challenge coin made that said retired command sergeant major. That's not misspeaking. That's straight up lying. And that's just a problem, the way that you're doing that. You can't, but it's almost like they don't really care. Is it that big of a deal? Are you going to still vote for him even though he lies about that? Look at Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. He lied about being in Vietnam. He never went to Vietnam, but for years he was saying when he fought in Vietnam, and then he never did. And then, I just misspoke. I mean, is that where we're at too? You misspeak, and then you're good? Do the voters not care? The voters in Connecticut did not care. And 20 years after 9/11, Walz gave a speech where he said, because he did deploy, but he went to Italy. And that's one of the things why I deployed during the War on Terror. Okay, we know what you did. And he said, when I left, I had a 2-year-old. When I came back, I had a 3-year-old. But, I mean, that sucks, and leaving your kids is not fun. And if you deploy overseas, that's fine, but you don't need to lie and said you war. He went to Italy. The biggest battle he fought was, which flavor gelato do I get after all that table wine and the 3-hour meal? And it's just trying to be and big, you're trying to just lead it on. Like, I've seen people before when they're asked about certain missions, and they'll just say, you do the math. I've seen other people say during the Vietnam era, I deployed during the Vietnam era. Did you go to Vietnam? Well, I don't talk about my service. Oh, that's pretty convenient. And then again, then you have the other veterans bashing other veterans, because J.D. Vance was a Marine. He went to Iraq, I think maybe twice. And but then he gets attacked by Seth Moulton, the congressman, who said he was a Marine. Well, he went to war. Well, he was a correspondent. So he's a Marine. He's a combat correspondent. So does that mean that you're not infantry, that you're not a Marine? Does that mean that your name's not above the Eagle Globe Anchor, the EGA the Marine Corps gives out? I think you're a Marine, and every Marine's a rifleman, right? But a congressman who's a combat vet, and again, I've never met Seth Moulton. I'm sure he's a great guy. I think he served 4 tours in Iraq. I think he got out as a captain. He definitely fought a lot, and that's awesome. But there's no reason to, just because you're a Democrat and J.D. Vance is a Republican, you need to bash his service. Not everyone is special forces. Not everyone is infantry. Does that mean the rest of them don't count? Does that mean the mechanic at Jalalabad Airfield who's fixing helicopters isn't a combat vet? What if he screwed up and the helicopter crashed and everyone dies? He's important. Every cog in the wheel is important. There's no reason to bash someone else's service when they're telling the truth about it. J.D. Vance was a Marine in Iraq. I mean, what if we didn't have people taking pictures of the Marines dragging other Marines blood-soaked out of places, or people that got blown up and hurt? Combat cameramen have been killed. Correspondents have been killed. We all know. What if we didn't have biographers telling you what's happening? And to bash him because he just wasn't. He had a gun and he was in combat. And in Iraq, if you haven't been there, I'm looking right at you, Tim Walz. The whole place is the front lines. I know people that were leaving the shitter on the way to the Tactical Operations Center got killed by a mortar. That just sucks. I mean, but it's combat and they were there. And they're just covering. Just tell the truth. What's so hard about that? But that just seemed to. I mean, even on C-SPAN, what did Pelosi say? Pelosi was introducing Walz at a speech on C-SPAN, and she commented how much we appreciate his service to our country and on the battlefield. This is on video. He was never on the battlefield. There's nothing wrong with stopping right there and saying, hey, technically I wasn't on the battlefield. Didn't say a word. He was introduced as a command sergeant major, retired, and then the subtitle said Afghanistan war veteran. And yeah, he's a veteran, but he's not an Iraq veteran. He's not a war veteran. And that's not a problem either. If you're a veteran, that's awesome. If you put your right hand up and you're serving the country, if you're defending the Constitution, that's wonderful. You don't need to lie about what you did just to sound cool. And you certainly shouldn't be jealous of people who did stuff. But I want to get back to how they're now calling him the Happy Warrior. And pay attention to that, too. See what they're saying and how many times it's repeated. I'm sure someone will make the video of Happy Warrior, Happy Warrior, Happy Warrior. Happy Warrior has been around for a while in politics, in American politics. At the Democratic National Convention in 1920, actually, Al Smith, who was a governor of New York running for president, was called a Happy Warrior by a guy by the name of Lyndon Johnson, LBJ. LBJ was there. Not LBJ, sorry. I wrote the wrong damn thing down. That wasn't him. That was FDR. Lyndon Johnson was later. So let's back up there. At the 1920 convention, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, introduced Al Smith, the governor of New York. See, that's a mistake, and I admitted it. I'm not going to keep running with it. I just wrote down the wrong damn thing because that's how fast and or slow my mind works. But FDR introduced Al Smith, the governor, at the DNC in 1920, describing him as a happy warrior. Happy Warrior actually comes from a poem written by Williams Wordsworth. Wordsworth in, when was that written? It was written a long time ago, something like 1806 or 1807 was when that was written. It described the warrior as a brave, generous, and moral man who was able to remain virtuous even in the midst of distress. I feel like I'm reading my own diary there. But it was that. I mean, even Happy Warrior, it's been used all through politics. Reagan had some great quotes about Happy Warrior that I wrote down somewhere here at CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Conference. I've actually spoken it there before. Pretty funny to do that. But in '85, Reagan said something, we've made progress already, so let us go forth with good cheer and stout hearts. Happy warriors out to seize back a country and a world of freedom. And that was 85, which means it's been going on for a while. You know, Reagan actually had a funnier quote that I wrote down. Happy warrior. He had like he was described as having the aw shucks mentality. And he was a great communicator. Really good at, he could make people on both sides of the aisle, even the press, like him. He actually could make Democrats vote for him. He was good. Reagan, speaking of happy warriors, one of his famous quotes was, "Wake me up in any emergency, even if I'm at a cabinet meeting." Nope, wake me up in geez, I screwed that up. Can we edit that one out? Totally. Because that's a great quote I don't want to screw up. So Reagan had a great quote, too. He was famously known as the aw shucks guy, who could make anyone like him, even the other side of the aisle. Democrats even voted for him. He had a great quote that said, "Wake me up in an emergency, even if I'm in a cabinet meeting." That's hilarious, because he's hinting that he's sleeping in a cabinet meeting. But yeah, so it's from a poem by William Wordsworth. It's written in iambic pentameter. I didn't know what that was, but it's a poem written into a series of lines and cadences and like certain rhymes and whatnot. I'm not going to read the Happy Warrior shit to you, but like the most famous the most famous iambic pentameter was Canterbury Tales, which is 17,000 lines. Like Chaucer wrote it in 1400. I'm going way off the point here, but anyway, some of the poem that Wordsworth wrote said, "If he be called upon to face some awful moment to which heaven has joined, great issue, good or bad for humankind, is happy as a lover and attired with sudden brightness like a man inspired." And attired, I'm assuming, means dressed. So anyway, to cut through the chase, a happy warrior is what they're using. And it was used, like I said before, by FDR, not LBJ, in 1920. But one of the most famous happy warriors was a dude also from Minnesota, and his name was Hubert Humphrey. And he was the vice president for LBJ. I screwed that up before, but I'm right this time. LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, Hubert Humphrey was the president. He was the VP. And LBJ, by the way, was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, which means he outranked any sergeant major or fake sergeant major. Just to be clear, there were a lot more veterans in the House and in the Senate than Tim Walz. But Hubert Humphrey was a 3-term senator from Minnesota, just like Walz. These are a lot of coincidences, and he was called a happy warrior. So LBJ, whose vice president was Hubert Humphrey, did resign after being elected, because LBJ became the president after JFK was assassinated. But he resigned. He did crush the election when he ran, and technically he could have run for his second full term, but he resigned, which is weird. This is a coincidence because Biden just resigned. And that's odd, too, by the way, for Biden to resign. If you got the most votes in the history of the galaxy, you think you'd try to get a second term. He didn't. But he resigned, and then in 1968, a fellow by the name of Robert F. Kennedy was the front runner, but he got assassinated because his brother got assassinated. A lot of the deep state didn't like them, but Hubert Humphrey gets the nomination. He runs against Nixon, but he gets crushed by Nixon. And then, well, not necessarily crushed. He got beat by Nixon, and the popular vote was closer. But the popular vote, even back then, doesn't mean much, too, because a lot of shady shit goes on during the vote counting. I mean, I'm in Massachusetts right now, and they've already sent out not the absentee, but the mail-in ballots, which is complete horseshit. But Humphrey loses to Nixon, who picks up a guy by the name of Spiro Agnew as his vice president. So they're doing whatever. Nixon wins another huge election. But somewhere along the line, Spiro Agnew resigned for a lot of stuff he was being accused of. Nixon wanted to get involved because of the Watergate thing. Agnew resigns because he does a plea deal for some sort of tax fraud. And to the day that he died, he said he didn't do anything. But someone's going after Spiro Agnew. Then they're going after Nixon for Watergate. Smells stinky of an inside job. But Nixon picks up a dude by the name of Gerald Ford to be his vice president. And then Nixon resigns, and Gerald Ford becomes president. Gerald Ford is the only person ever to become president, actually vice president and president of the United States, without ever being elected to that. And that's interesting as shit, too, because Gerald Ford was a leading member of the Warren Commission, which investigated the Kennedy assassination. He also acted as an informant for J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. Several months before his death in 2006, we're talking about Ford, a cache of declassified documents revealed that Gerald Ford, then a congressman, had approached FBI Assistant Director Cartha DeLoach and offered to confidentially keep the Bureau informed on the commission's deliberations. Among Ford's many leaks that were evaluated, that two unnamed members of the commission, most likely Richard Russell and Hale Boggs, remain unconvinced by FBI evidence that the kill shot that had been fired from the book depository in Texas. This is on JFK, obviously. This is a Warren Commission. Ford is an informant before he becomes vice president, then president, which just sounds shady. We probably should dig into that later. And then, Warren was a close friend of the Kennedy family, and his personal attachment may have interfered with his duties on the commission. In one of the most infamous episodes of the investigation, Warren denied his fellow commission members access to Kennedy's autopsy photos because he said they were just too disturbing. So you got a lot of these people in there. You can't see the autopsy because it might just disturb you, which is weird. They still haven't showed bin Laden's picture either. I wish they would. It exists. I've said before, it's in a file cabinet at CIA. We'll probably never see that. He later, going back to this, later refused to allow the commission to interview certain witnesses whom Lee Harvey Oswald may have known in Mexico, and even tried to block an interview with First Lady Jackie Kennedy because he didn't want to invade her privacy. So one, is too violent. You shouldn't see it. We don't want to investigate the First Lady, interview the First Lady because it might bother her, even though she was right there and potentially saw what happened. You got Gerald Ford in there who's on the commission. All of a sudden he becomes a president because two dudes resign. And even Spiro Agnew, he died later of what have you. And even people involved with the Warren Commission met with some of Castro's people off the record because they went fishing. This is just shady. And the FBI and the CIA, we're going back into how many people are getting killed, JFK, RFK, and then Lee Harvey Oswald was monitored by the FBI, CIA before the assassination, even in Mexico. So we've got weird shit going on, assassination attempt. Who are these guys? The guy on the sloped roof, Lee Harvey Oswald, who even said when he was accused of killing JFK, he couldn't believe it. He's like, "You're accusing me of what? I'm being charged with what?" And the Warren Report wrote 888 pages on how Oswald could have killed JFK, but in 888 pages, they never said why. So that's just weird. We're looking at a lot of similarities, a lot of inside stuff. Even Jack Ruby, who was the guy that killed Lee Harvey Oswald, and he'd been seen around police stations. He was a nightclub owner in Dallas, and he was kind of down on his luck. He owned some clubs here and there, the Oak Lawn area, and all of a sudden he just decides he's going to be a patriot and shoot Lee Harvey Oswald, who said he never did it, before he can say anything. Lee Harvey Oswald gets shot in the abdomen, goes to the same hospital where the autopsy or the staff dealt with President Kennedy's body, did the autopsy, and the same doctors worked on him. He died because he got shot in the guts. Couldn't save him. So he's gone. That's over, wrapped up. What would happen if Trump got hit and then they just killed the guy on the sloped roof? Case closed, right? Yeah, so I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory if you just look in the way it goes with Kennedy to all the way up to Gerald Ford, Warren Commission, RFK. 1968 RFK was running. They didn't like the two brothers. The deep states here and there. Fast forward a little bit. Happy warriors all. But it is, again, the election season, because it's always the election season, so I guess I'd have to talk about that. It's kind of funny to watch, especially nowadays with AI and everything that you don't know what's real and people spouting off misinformation, even when fact checkers are not sure what their political agenda is, and the algorithms that control artificial intelligence is, again, I might have said this last week, but the way it was described to me is if you're taking a test and your professor lets you use a calculator but warns the calculator is only going to be right 75% of the time, would you trust it? That's kind of where we're at. But it is the election season, and so Kamala Harris, as you may or may not know, is running against Donald Trump. And everything from AI, they're talking about crowd size and whatnot. And then even recently, even though Kamala Harris has yet to have a press conference where she's asked questions, she did sort of say in the speeches that are the same every time that she wants to not tax tips. You can't tax tips. Donald Trump said that too. I think if that happens either way, it's great. I don't think you should be taxing people in that service industry because they don't get paid even a minimum wage. And for people who are all about the middle class, you should be concerned that employers aren't even paying servers minimum wage. I was just talking to one of my children who happens to work in the service industry and said it's not uncommon for people just to come in. She's not even doesn't get a paycheck because of tip share and all that bullshit and paying taxes, and have people come in there, you kind of disrespect the server and get all the extra shit and the free bread, and then, you know, $100 bill, your tab, and then crumple up like 2 ones and leave it there for 2 hours of service, which is nonsense. And their excuse is, well, you should get a job that pays more. Yeah, but also you should stop being a jackass. If you can't afford to tip your server, you're an asshole too. Don't go out to eat. Learn how to cook. Learn how to use a damn crock pot. They're so delicious. But anyway, they're both saying that they're not going to tax tips, which could be a good thing. But I'm not sure if you're aware of this. On August 7th, 2022, President Harris, the Vice President of the United States, is the President of the Senate. And the reason it works that way is because there are 100 senators. And there needs to be a tie-breaking vote. So the President of the Senate, who is the Vice President, is the deciding vote. So Vice President Harris cast the tie-breaking vote to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, be very careful with the words they throw into things. Like, equity sounds a lot like equality, and that's not an accident. It's so you think equity means equality, but it doesn't. Equality means, well, we're all the same. Equity means we end at the same place, which is complete nonsense. But the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't do that. What the Inflation Reduction Act actually did is it provided $80 billion in additional funding to the IRS, which then got to work cracking down on the service industries reporting a tip so they could be taxed. I mean, even that right there, you're the tie-breaking vote that says part of it is to give an additional, that's not their budget, an additional $80 billion to the IRS. Now, think about how much you love the IRS. Aren't they awesome? How they're in everything. And they will come after you. But that gives, she voted tie-breaking vote. And Joe Biden bragged about it, that we're giving $80 billion more to the IRS. What do you think the IRS is going to do with that? In February of 2023, the IRS released a proposed revenue procedure known as, this is a brilliant one, Service Industry Tip Compliance Agreement, or SITCA, because we do love abbreviations and acronyms, a voluntary tip reporting program between the IRS and employers in various service industries. This is all in quotes. Monitoring of employer compliance based on actual annual tip revenue and charge tip data from an employer's point of sale system and allowance for adjustments in tipping practices from year to year. So Kamala Harris was the deciding vote on taxing tips a lot more and making sure you're not cheating, making sure when someone gets paid in cash, making sure you're watching that shit, because I'll be damned if we're not going to get more money to the IRS, because, you know, it's not a revenue problem, by the way, it's a spending problem. There's too many government agencies, and the Inflation Reduction Act gave $80 billion more to the IRS. There are certain things that should be taken away because the federal government's got way too much control. IRS being one of them, EPA being another. There's a lot of different government agencies that we need to get rid of. It's not a revenue problem. It's government projects and quote unquote free shit. It's free college. She doesn't mention that, and I'm sure she'll change her tune, even though she voted to tax your tips more. And that includes everyone who's a server, and I hope you're listening. I hope you're paying attention. There are certain reasons to vote for certain people. My reason for not voting for Kamala Trump is simple. I don't like an open border because I don't like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Islamic Jihad crossing said border to get here where I live. And it's happening. There's my vote. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care if you're the first woman to be president. I don't like that. If you're a server, you should not like that they're coming after your tips, which they are. By the way, do you ever sit there and listen to the government or to politicians say, well, we're just going to increase taxes on corporations? What do you think happens when they do that? Do you think the corporations say, well, I guess we're done, we'll just pay our taxes? Or do they just raise the prices on everything they're selling you, the consumer? Or do they just take their companies and their business and the jobs they've created and take them to Ireland or somewhere close by where they'll work there? Raising taxes is going to get rid of the industry. However, if you don't pay attention, which I'm hoping you do, you won't even notice that. You think, yay, tax the rich, tax the rich. I mean, we're at a point now where people who use too many items at the self-checkout are happy with a congresswoman who wears a dress to a gala that was funded by her contributors and probably lobbyists and lawyers that say, tax the rich. But she's going to, don't worry, she'll bring inflation down too. But again, too, they interviewed Joe Biden, allegedly. He didn't sound that great. You can barely hear him talk. And of course, as I say that, I start coughing, so you can barely hear me talk. Giving a whisper interview, and he's not talking about inflation. He's not talking about the border. He says, because he was pulled out of office in a coup, and they put Harris in place without a single vote. Like they said she didn't get a vote, not a delegate, but on a Zoom call, you're good. Don't worry, American voter. We're just going to put her there, and we're going to pretend that you love her, and the media is going to go with us, and social media is going to go with us. And Biden in his interview said, and I think the quote is here, his number one issue is, we must defeat Trump. All right, I understand you don't like him, but can you tell me why you must? And don't give me that, well, we're defending democracy. Horse shit. There has never been a more dangerous time in this nation right now because nobody's in charge. Kamala Harris is out there running like she's never been in office, like she hasn't been in the White House the past three and a half years, saying she's going to change everything, saying she's not going to tax tips. When she's already taxed tips. And then Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, again, too, which I think is probably the hardest job in the White House. You have to talk to the press, even if they're softball questions. But she's saying that Kamala Harris is hiring 1,000 more border agents. We need more border agents. That's in campaign ads. Well, Kamala Harris was the border czar for 3.5 years. And then now they're saying, no, she wasn't. Who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes and ears? And they're even going so far as saying the border is secure. How many times do we need to tell you? The border's not secure. Hiring more agents. Let's expand the federal government. KJP even said, she was asked, it wasn't even by Peter Doocy, who's a great guy from Fox News. He was at my wedding, actually. Love Peter Doocy. I don't think it was even him that said, when will the president, the vice president talk to us? And she said, the press secretary who speaks on behalf of the president said, they speak regularly and I'll leave it at that. No, they fucking don't. And they lie to you and they believe it. And then all we argue about is crowd size. Who cares? Donald Trump had a huge crowd size in 2020. He didn't win the election. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but he had a huge crowd size. Basically, the entire country wanted to win, but Joe Biden got 28 trillion million votes. But, if Republicans were smart, they just hit the corporate tax stuff. Maybe they're not smart enough. Why wouldn't you tell people that you raise taxes, they're going to get raised on everyone? But that's just that. And then President Trump gave an interview recently with Elon Musk on X, which that was interesting to me too, because here's a guy, Elon Musk, who invents rockets and launches them into space and then brings them back. They land in the same spot on water. But for some reason, he invented like the electric car, the Tesla and all that stuff. Darling of the media for a while, but now he can't, like there was hackers or something, like he can't handle the technology. I don't buy that. But he interviewed Trump. But there was a letter written from the EU, and I didn't put it in my notes, but I did pull it up on my computer. The EU, the European Union, wrote Elon Musk a letter basically saying, I'm going to read the first part of this. I'm writing you in the context of recent events in the United Kingdom and in relation to the planned broadcast of your platform X of a live conversation between a U.S. presidential candidate and yourself, which will also be accessible to users in the EU. And I'm not going to read this nonsense. You pretty much know what it says. You're responsible for misinformation, disinformation, counterinformation, and that's causing all the unrest from the far-right crazies. Not complete invasion of the open borders, but it's Musk and interviewing Donald Trump. They don't even mention him by name. And the UK is blaming basically the U.S. of causing unrest. Now, first of all, we stopped giving a rat's red dick about what England thinks in 1776. But if the EU and the Brits are getting involved, that is blatant election interference. You should be pissed about that. The UK, the EU is trying to interfere with our elections. You can't listen to Donald Trump. And he was, this guy invented electric cars, like I said, with the rockets. He admits he's maybe a centrist, a little bit left, but they hate him now. Why? Not because he supports Donald Trump, but because of free speech. The deep state, the EU, the World Economic Forum, the powers that be behind the scenes, the John Kerrys, the Al Gore, the bullshit about man-made climate change, they hate him now because he wants to speak for real, and they're saying, admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations. They're calling him a far right, inciting riots, not the unchecked migration. And the cops over there, when did UK cops become such pussies? Did you see the video? Wasn't that a cop? A dude was getting jumped by an invader with a knife. Because I don't know if you know this, they get very stabby over there. And he finally starts beating up a dude to stabbing people. Cop jumps on him, and then the migrant kills him. So that's just nuts. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take away misinformation. They'll shut you down. You've seen the censorship, and it's an issue with the schools. It's an issue with social media, every other platform. And then with the counter accusations, you'll hear people on the left say, "Well, this vast right wing conspiracy in the right wing media." What right wing media? What's there, like 2 of them, 3 of them tops? And even X is not right wing. You're just allowed to say stuff without being shut down because you're affecting the election. It's all horseshit. And then, even getting further, and we're not even defending the Constitution anymore because we don't teach the Constitution anymore. They don't teach it in schools, and people don't realize that. If you don't know your rights, they're going to go away. The oath of enlistment in the military is defending the Constitution. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The office support and defend the Constitution when you run for office, or as they love to call it, a public servant, which is horseshit. They shouldn't call politicians public servants. They should call them master stock pickers because they're geniuses. But we're not teaching the Constitution anymore to our young ones. I bet too, if you ask teachers who allegedly are teaching history in the Constitution, are you more interested in defending the Constitution of the United States, or are you more interested in defending democracy in Ukraine? I think it's pretty sad, but you're going to know what the answer is there. We don't even know what's going on in Ukraine. I have a feeling, though, if people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who've been in office for a long, long time, are interested in Ukraine, all of a sudden love war, is it because they want to defend democracy and NATO? Or is it because, man, we've been laundering a lot of money in Ukraine for a long, long time, and I'll be damned if anyone's going to find out about it. That's probably why they hate Donald Trump. You think this time, he went in last time like he's trying to play nice? What if he starts showing you what these fuckers have actually been up to? That's probably why they hate him. Maybe the media too. Maybe they got dirt. Everyone's got dirt on everyone else too. Again, that's why I'm not running for politics. I might take a position at the Pentagon if Trump wins and I can fire a bunch of people. That's a different podcast. If you want to hear more about that, let's do that. Put it in the comments again too. 2 more things we need to talk about, because even though Donald Trump is going to crash the economy and we're on the brink of World War III, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump, but we are on the brink of World War III, because I don't know if you heard of this country called Iran, Iraq, I suck, whatever. But people are asking kind of what's going on over there, and everything that we have is pointed at Iran right now. There's a lot of shit going on with Israel, with Iran, killing Hamas guys that were there, billionaires going to funerals and whatnot, and getting jacked in their house because some dude snuck through the mountains and planted a bomb under a bed, which to me is some straight up like if Chuck Norris and Jason Bourne had a kid, it would be the dude that did that, because that's sick, man. That's a great one. I might have to be jealous of that guy and talk shit. No, he didn't. But they're worried about Iran hitting back, which might be inevitable, but they've kind of been hitting Israel through Hezbollah, Hamas, and then those Houthis, whatever they are down in Yemen. But we got a bunch of stuff there. Israel will hit their nuke sites. Israel will hit Karg Island, which 90% of Iran's oil exports flow through there. That wipes out a lot of their funding, which they use for... Iran only uses their funding for humanitarian things and their people, obviously. They don't fund terrorists all over the fucking world. And the IDF, they're exceptional at hitting industrial sites. I'll tell you what, man, they let Mossad and the IDF off the leash. A lot of stuff's going to happen. But America's made it clear that they stand ready to help Israel defend itself. And I know it's very sensitive right now, especially because of a political season. You can't say you defend Israel because the people who know nothing will say that you're a Zionist. They don't even know what a Zionist means. That means Israel needs to have a state of their own. They should have a state of their own. You say that you're actually a Zionist as well. But they think that Hamas loves them. Queers for Hamas. Yeah. See how just see what they think about that. But speaking of Gerald Ford, the USS Ford's over there. Carrier Strike Group. Got there last week. It carries about 75 aircraft. The Eisenhower's over there. It's heading there. At least it led Norfolk, headed to the Eastern Med. It's got about 60 aircraft. These are big. Aircraft carriers are big. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin also ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group to the Middle East. And he ordered the USS Georgia, probably the most lethal of all. It's a nuclear-powered sub armed with 150 cruise missiles. That's going over. And it should cause alarm in Tehran. More on arrival. The military might's all heading over there. It's intended to help Israel defend itself and just a deterrent, because I know we talk about how weak we are. We still have deterrents that do head over there. Forward defense, I think you would call that. But the U.S. has to be ready for a set of attacks against Israel by Iran. Everyone's kind of agreeing on that. Secretary Kirby, is he a secretary? Press secretary, I think he is. We've increased our force posture and capabilities in the region, even just the last few days. We're preparing what could be a significant set of attacks. Kirby, he's a political windbag, but he was an admiral, and he does know a thing or two about that. They're just concerned. The IDF concludes a preemptive strike on Iran. It might be necessary. The way it did in early June of 1967 when IAF launched a surprise attack on the Egyptian Air Force, which is a badass attack. They destroyed 388 planes, killed 100 Egyptian pilots, just a few hours, 6-day war. They're capable of it, man. And like I said, if we let them off the leash, they're gonna unleash hell. So a war in the Middle East, hopefully it won't happen. The way around that, again, is it's the religious zealots that are crazy that are in charge, that we can't let them be in charge, but they are. And that can be an issue. Sorry, I didn't read the letter there. Then the last thing I want to touch on here, too, just because it's interesting as shit. Speaking of Elon Musk, there's a new space race in between military-industrial complex and SpaceX. Elon Musk has been very successful, like you mentioned. Boeing sent some astronauts up to the International Space Station. The Boeing Starliner mission, 2 people went up there for, I think it was an 8-day mission. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, both retired Navy captains. Extensive piloting experience. They've both been to space a number of times, but they're stuck up there. And typical government, isn't it funny? So they're up there, and they turned a few days of a mission into months. Like they might not be able to bring these people, these pilots, this man and this woman back for a while, and SpaceX might need to go rescue them, even though Boeing sent them up. But a typical government agency said, don't worry, they're not stranded. Man, if you're up in a tin can and you're just like David Bowie orbiting the Earth and they can't get you, that's, to me, is stranded. But I'm sure Elon Musk will rescue them and then get called a piece of shit because he likes free speech. You know what I wonder about this, too, though, on a closing note? Well, because there's supposed to be 7 astronauts up there. Now there's 9, and they're going to be up there for a while. I like to read a lot. I've read a few books. One of my daughters and I decided actually to start reading old school literature. Pretty interesting. I normally just read politics, history, and shit like that, but I'm actually reading stuff that I need to reread certain paragraphs just because the English is so cool. One of the things I'm reading, though, I'm rereading the book of Genesis just because it's a hell of a story, but it's kind of, it really goes quickly over who gave birth to whom and whatnot. But they mentioned the firmament in the very beginning when God created the world, which to me is fascinating too, because firmament, again, I mentioned some crazies on the internet. Firmament is because the world is flat and we're all living in a matrix and the firmament's over the top. God said firmament kind of separates us from the heavens and it separates the land and the sea. But the reason that when people like Elon Musk or Boeing launch aircraft, it hooks, it's not taking advantage of the Earth's rotation to go faster. It's just doing that to get out of sight of everyone. So when it smacks into the firmament, because it's a flat Earth and we live in a dome like the Simpsons would say, that's what it does. So I do want to hear from the flat earthers, if you're watching this, get into my DMs, man. Slide into the DMs or leave a comment. Tell me about what's going on. If there is really a space station, they really got stuck, or is there did they hit the firmament and they're all dead? I don't know, but that's that. So make sure go to rjoapparel.com. Front toward enemy. You got to get some of the shirts, and I will sign the operator. Anything you desire within reason. But I've signed funny ones before. RJO Apparel is great. You can get the Ibogaine, legalized Ibogaine shirt, stuff like that. So if you go to RJO Apparel and get some really cool shit and don't jump so high that you smack your head on the firmament, you're never out of the fight.